Okay, hi. Welcome, Beady friends. I am Meredith from Beadalon, and today's class we are going to be learning how to use the Beadalon knotter tool to make a mala style necklace. So lots to learn today, lots to go over, and hopefully some fun new skills that you can use to make both this necklace, but then also take and use for different kinds of jewelry making as well. So this is, gosh, I think it's our 12th or 13th class now for Michael's, and it has just been a blast, and I appreciate everybody who has participated. And if you are new to my classes, welcome. And don't forget that you can always go back onto the Michael's Community Classroom page and watch not only my archived classes, but tons of classes from other makers as well. All kinds of really, really good content there. Just a word of advice, of caution, just a word. In the very beginning, we will not be able to be making along this whole project together today. I'm going to show the technique. I'm going to show starting, and I'm going to show finishing, but it's a little bit, it's probably more of like a 2.5 hour kind of a class. It's very repetitive. Once you know the skill, it's just a question of doing all of the steps over and over again. So unfortunately, you don't need to see me stringing up all the beads. You don't need to see me knotting up all the beads, but we'll learn the basics. We'll learn how to do the project. And then, usually within about 24 hours now, Michael's posts the classes on their community classroom page and on the YouTube site. So if you are joining me from that site, welcome as well. And you can feel free to forward, backwards, replay as many times as you need to be able to learn how to use the Beadalon knotter tool to make a mala necklace. So this is actually the second class using the Beadalon knotter tool that I've done for Michael's, and I'm actually wearing the lariat that I did for the first class. It was a slightly different technique than we are going to be learning along today, but as with all of the classes that I have done so far for Michael's, we're building on our skills. So if you go back and you watch the very, very beginning and you watch Beading 101, you'll learn all about the basics of making jewelry. If you watch the first wire working, same deal. If you watch the first knotting video, you'll see kind of the basics of knotting. So I'm going to try to reiterate some of the tips and tricks that I did in that video, but I would definitely recommend, if this is something that you're really into and you get really jazzed about, go back and watch some of the other videos. I've been rewatching them, and there's some really good stuff in there. So it looks like everybody is here. I love seeing all of where everybody is from and what everybody is looking to learn, and hopefully all of the video and all of the audio and the chats and everything are going great. If you have any questions as you're going along, please add those in the chat room as well. My friend and colleague Agate from the Beadalon office is moderating in the chat room. She will be posting all of the links. I can see she's already posted the instructions, so if you want to follow along with the instructions, you can definitely go ahead and do that. Oh, we have somebody here from India. It's very exciting. All right, so I think, Stephanie, I think we're ready to go ahead and take that overhead camera, and we can go over and start talking about the materials that we are going to need for class today. So spoiler alert, this is our project. So let's talk about our materials. So the first thing that we are going to be using is the Beadalon knotter tool. So we'll learn how to use it, and then we'll learn how to use it for our project. But this is what that thing is called, the Beadalon knotter tool. And I definitely, if you don't have this, and yes, I will say I am biased. We do have several different tools at Beadalon to do knotting of necklaces, but this is my absolute favorite, easiest, most efficient, and best tool that I like to use for knotting. So that's why I teach with it. We'll also, of course, need some scissors. That's just kind of one of those things that you always have by your side when you're doing anything. We'll also need some Beadalon bead stringing. glue. We'll talk a little bit more about this and the best way to use this when we get to the end, when we need to tie and glue our knot. Then we are going to need some silk cord. So today I am using the gray silk cord from the variety pack. These are all size 6s, okay? And the size 6 silk cord is 0.7 millimeters or 0.028 inches. So that that gives you a good sense of the size of the silk. And why is that important? Because the size of the silk is what you're going to need to choose based on the whole size of your beads. Okay, so hold on to that piece of information right in the back of your head. We're going to get back to that. At Michael's also, just so that you know, if you're more of kind of a purist on the silk, there's a variety pack that has 2 6s, 2 4s, and a 2. And I just mentioned how there are different sizes of silk, and you need to be aware of that given the size of the holes of your beads. This is what is available in Michael's, but don't fret. Silk is available all the way as small as a size 0 and all the way up to a size 20 in these carded cords, okay? So again, we're gonna come back to that in just a second, but I wanna talk about the fun stuff. Let's talk about what beads we're going to be using for our project. So for our example, the one that we had in the photo online for the Michael's class, as well as the example that is in the instructions, we have this beautiful crystal pendant. We have these large beads here, and we're going to call those marker beads. We have these smaller beads here. And then we also have, if you can see on either side of the marker beads, some little size 8 seed beads. And the reason why those size 8 seed beads are there and why they are necessary is because the holes on those marker beads are bigger than the knot of the silk. So I am throwing out a lot of information at the get-go, and I'm going to break down what all of these things mean and why they're important as we go along. But I want to start getting people used to, if this is not a technique that you've done before, getting used to the words and the different names of things as we're working through our project. So I think that is all of the materials, all of the tools. We got our focal out of the way. So let's start talking again about silk. So I mentioned that the silk comes in these cords. In these cards. The silk cord comes on cards. I'm going to do that a couple times, guys. There are 2 meters on this card. So for the project that we're doing today, you will need 1 full card. If I am making a shorter necklace, like a 16-inch necklace, or maybe I'm restringing some pearls that need to be restrung, I can generally get 2 16-inch necklaces out of 1 2-meter card if I'm being very conservative in my waist. Just a little something to file away in the back of your head. So when you get the cord, and this is a size number 6 cord, and I'm choosing that because when I look at my bead holes, this is when I'm really impressed with the lens on my camera on my phone. You can see that the bead hole is pretty large. Let's see how close I can get, right? Luckily my nails are still looking pretty good. There we go. So you start kind of getting an eye for guessing what the best size silk will be for your beads. And I found that most of the beads at Michael's have that similarly of this size beads, similarly sized hole. But that is not a tried and true rule. You always need to double check your bead holes, because even in the same strand, the bead holes could be different sizes. So I just took the silk off of the card. So I don't really save these for anything. I'd love to hear some tips and tricks. I guess you can, if you have extra silk, I do wrap it back up, wrap it back up afterwards. But when the silk comes off of the card, you can see it's kind of kinked up, right? There are all these little bends in it. And the reason why that is because the silk has been wrapped around the cord, right? So the easiest way to get rid of those bends is to gently, you're going to take one end in one hand and one on the other, and just pull, give a little tug, little tug, little tug, little tug, little tug. The other way that I like to do this, and unfortunately I can't show it on camera, but I will take the silk and I will pull it, or I'm sorry, I will kind of hook it over a doorknob, or door handle is actually a better way of doing it. Our office has the perfect door handles for this. And I'll take both sides and I'll lean back, and that it saves your hands from all of this tugging, because it can kind of mess your hands up a little bit, but it's really no big deal. And what you're actually doing is you're compressing this weave. So you can see it's actually two strands of silk that are twisted together. And when you're pulling it, not only are you getting those kinks out, but you're also compressing the weave. And if you don't do that, what will end up happening is it will do it as your beads wear on your design. So if you haven't done this over time, you're going to end up with big gaps in between your beads as the silk relaxes over time. And I love the ideas that people are posting for different things, different ways to recycle those cards. You can use it to make pom-poms. You can use it for let's see, what if somebody else had a really good idea up here also. But I like the pom-poms idea the best. So I always start with a knot in the end of my silk, and I'm going to just pull this down just a little bit and see if we can get a little bit closer, just with regular. And the one thing I did not mention that's always a good thing to have at hand is a ruler or some sort of measuring device. I have, half a dozen at my disposal here, right by my beading space. So we're going to take about 4 inches. I usually eyeball this, but it's a good idea in the beginning, especially if you're not super good at eyeballing things, just to measure it out and just tie an overhand knot. The process of knotting is not really, I don't want to use the word fancy, but it's not complicated, right? We're just tying a whole bunch of overhand knots. We're just doing it in a very specific way. So I just tied, it's really just the stopper knot here, but I need this length at the end to be able to use at the very end to tie my pendant on, okay? You can kind of see, I left the little phrase there so you can kind of see where the knot is underneath this pendant, okay? So that's where we're going. So before we get started, before we do anything, before we talk about our design or the mala or how or why we're doing this, the very first thing that we need to do is just double check that our bead holes are not going to slip over the knot in our silk. So I'm taking a bead that I'm using for my project and I'm threading it all the way down to the end, and I'm making sure that that knot holds that bead in place. And indeed it does. If my silk were too small and that knot were too small, it would slide right out. So I would now no go. If the knot were too big, one of two things will happen, or maybe both of two things will happen. If the knot is too big, it just won't look right. One of the things and one of the reasons why we knot in between the beads is to minimize the friction of the beads against each other. That was kind of the original intent for when you're knotting, you know, your grandmother's fancy pearls, or any pearls for that matter. You want to put those knots in there so that the beads won't rub against each other, because it makes the it rubs the nacre off of the pearls and makes them dull. But I think that the knots have a lot more life in them, or a lot more reasons for living. One of which is to show off all of the sides of the beads, right? If the knots weren't there, you wouldn't be able to see all of the beautiful inclusions, the beautiful pieces, parts, and colors of these beads. This is especially important if you have something like an opal that has a lot of chatoyancy on the different sides. You really want all of the sides of those beads to shine. Also, another reason for knotting is if your necklace should break for any reason. You catch it on something, somebody yanks it, mostly just catching it on something, or maybe something has been rubbing against it. If it breaks in one point, you have all of these knots here, so your beads aren't going everywhere. You at most will lose maybe one, maybe two beads. Those are some of the reasons why I really like this technique, just in general. For stringing beads and making up a necklace. I love these agate beads that I got at Michael's, because just in when I'm talking to everybody and explaining some different reasons why we knot, my eyes keep getting distracted by all of the beautiful inclusions and all of the beautiful things that are going on in these beads. It's always squirrel with me. So, okay, let's get back focused. So we're knotting in between our beads, and we have double checked now to see that size 6 silk is the perfect size for these beads. Now, one thing that I did not mention is I'm actually using different colors of beads for my example today. These are, excuse me, the rutilated agate. They're still the 6mm that I used in the photo, but instead of the bamboo coral rounds that I used in this example, I am using the rutilated agate. You need 4 packs, or 4 double strands, 4 tags in order, I'm sorry, 3 to do this project, because you need a lot of beads to make the mala necklace. You actually need 100 of the the 6mm bead. And then you need, I believe it's 8 of the marker beads. And for the marker beads that I'm using today, I'm using this agate gray, which are taking the place of the gold agate round beads from the example. So if you're following along in the instructions, I've just substituted out some beads for a couple of reasons. The first is I think it's always nice to show different variations. But then when I went to buy the beads for this project at Michael's, I bought all of the agates, and so then I needed to go for a different color for the other one. So sometimes when you're beading, practicality and availability is going to dictate what your design is. And the same is true for when you're teaching classes and learning how to do things. Okay, so now that I have my one bead tested on my silk, let's learn how to use our tool, right? So this is the tool that we're using today. It is the Beadalon knotter tool. And the tool works very simply. You hold it in your dominant hand. So I'm a righty, I'm right-handed, so I'm holding it in my right hand. And you use your thumb on that same hand to push up the top of the tool. So if anybody is out there who has the tool, who got the supplies, who's working along with me, you just want to hold it comfortably in your hand and just push up on that top. And as you do that, you can notice that the yoke, so we're learning a couple more words here. This is the yoke, pushes up against the awl, okay? So just notice that is the mechanism by which your knot is going to slide off, right? Okay, you gotta trust me on this one. But most importantly, the top of this is very, very sharp. And it's sharp by design so that that knot can slide off. You want to make sure that you never poke yourself. I have poked myself and it is very, very sharp. So you want to make sure that when you're not using the tool, there's a little rubber top that slides back on to prevent you from poking yourself, hopefully. But just be very, very careful with this awl part. So that's the mechanics of this tool. And it always amazes me when I demonstrate. So that simple movement makes perfect knots every time. So in order to allow the tool to make our knot perfectly, I'm going to show you the technique, what you need to do with both hands. And I'm going to do this several lots and lots of times to show how to use the Beadalon knotter tool to make these knots. So not to fret, I'm going to do it fast. I'll do it slow. I'll do it probably not on my hands and but you get the general idea. I will do this many times. But if you have a specific question, please put that in the comments and I will be sure to touch on that. So the way that this works is you wrap it around your 3 fingers of your, I'm going to say my left hand, of your non-dominant hand, and drop the bead through the center. So what we're doing is we're creating an overhand knot, but we're doing it in a specific way. So show that one more time. Okay, I have my bead up against my knot. I'm coming around 3 fingers of my hand and I'm coming through. So I have that knot right there. Okay. And I like to rest that knot against the pointer finger and my left hand, my non-dominant hand. So now what I want to make sure that I do is I flip my hand, because what I'm going to be doing with my tool is I'm going to pick up this thread coming from left to right. Okay. And this is where you want to make sure you don't poke yourself. So I'm going to pick up the thread from left to right so that you can see that X that I've made with my tool. Now I want to take my pointer finger and of my right hand and hold it gently but firmly against that awl. So not on the top of the awl, not on the bottom of the awl, right on the top of that awl on the side. And at this point, what that index finger is doing is I'm holding that silk in place against the awl. So I can release this hand. And now the key to a really good knot is pulling, you can kind of see my fingers coming toward the camera, is pulling straight up. So it's hard to show you what I'm doing when I'm pulling straight up. So I'm going to move my hand to the side, but you want to move your hand straight up, because what that's going to do is that's going to tighten that knot against the bead. Okay. Next step is to take that silk through the yoke. And I'm putting a pretty good pressure here. I don't have a death grip. Nothing is going to hurt or break, but I have enough pressure here so that with my thumb, I'm pushing up. Let's get nice and close. Pushing up, that knot is going to push against that bead and pop off of the tool. Okay. That is how you use the Beadalon knotter tool to make a knot against your beads. So let me load up a couple more beads on my practice silk before we get to our necklace. So those of you who joined me in my previous knotting class will note a couple of differences that I'm doing right now. The first is I'm preloading my beads. So before, when I was doing the kind of the stationed or the tin cup style knotting, I was putting each bead on individually. And if that is a technique that works better for you, keep doing it. But traditionally, and especially using the Beadalon knotter tool, you want to preload all of your beads, which is why when you see the second step in the instructions, it tells you the pattern of beads to load up onto your silk in order to make the bracelet, or I'm sorry, the necklace. We're not making a bracelet today, we're making a necklace. But before we even get to that, let's go over just the plain old knotting a couple more times. Okay, so let's everybody stretch our shoulders out, and we're going to move our next bead down into place. Okay, so let's see, I'm going to just bring that camera down ever so slightly. It's always better to get closer. Okay, so I have my bead down into place, and it's time to make my next knot. So I'm going to follow those very same steps. I'm going to wrap the silk from front to back around my 3 fingers and drop it through the center. So those beads are always being dropped through the center to make that overhand knot right there. So now my palm is facing down, the back of my hand is facing up, and I'm going to come through with my knotter tool and pick up from left to right the silk, making that X. Then with my little pointer finger here, I'm going to hold the top of the awl, release here with my left hand, pull straight up, and that straight up is what's going to give you the best knot every time. Then I'm going to come here, put the silk through the awl, and let's see, it's always fun to kind of try this from a different angle. With pulling it down and to the left, it's kind of like a 45-degree angle. I'm not pulling up here or out here or even over this way. I'm pulling down and to the left at a 45-degree angle. And then I'm going to push up with my thumb, and that pushes that knot right up against that bead and off. So let's do that a couple more times until we really feel like we've got it. And you can see when I move my next bead into place, I don't put my tool down. And that's one of the genius of this tool, is that once you get it, you can knot up a whole strand in 5 or 10 minutes tops, especially if you're being nice and careful about it. Okay, so let's go do the hand wrap from the very, very beginning. So I have the bead part is in my right hand, and the rest of the silk and the unknotted beads are in my left. I'm taking that, and you can see I still have that tool. I'm taking those beads around my hand, around 3 fingers of my hand, and through the middle. If it's easier to think that you're just tying an overhand knot, just think about it like that. But all I'm doing is I'm going around and through the middle. And now I'm going to pick it up left to right, make that X, hold it on the top with my fingers, release here, pull straight up, through the middle and off. Now I'm going to do one up to speed, and then I'm going to slow it back down again. And as I'm doing it up to speed, I want everybody to know 2 things. First of all, there are detailed step-by-step instructions. You see how fast that was? I'm going to do another one. Detailed step-by-step instructions that come with the Beadalon knotter tool. And gosh, probably 15 or 16 years ago now, that's how I learned how to use this, by following the instructions that were included. And they're the same instructions. They've been updated a little bit, but they're really good instructions because now 15 years later, here I am teaching you. And if you are left-handed, I have taught many, many left-handed people how to do it. We just have to pretend like we're in a mirror, and everything that I'm doing, you do as if you were watching, as if you were my mirror. And actually, you could, I don't know if this would work, but a suggestion is to flip your Zoom video so that you're watching me backwards I don't know. You'll have to try that and let me know. Let me know. Let all the left-handers out there can let me know if that is something that works for you. All right. So let me, now that you kind of saw it up to speed, let me slow that back down again. I've moved my bead into place, and I'm holding the beads in my right hand, wrapping around 3 fingers in my left hand and through the center. Okay. And now I have my tool, and I'm coming from left to right, making that X, putting my finger right there on the top, not on the top like that, just to the side on the top, and pulling straight up. One of the challenges people have, if you don't pull straight up, it can be hard to get that knot nice and close. The other thing that I want to mention is I'm holding my tool parallel to my workspace. And that is not only to show everybody what I'm doing, but that is good practice. You don't want it up like this. You don't want it over like this. You don't want it up and down like this. You want it parallel to your workspace, Beadalon logo up, because like really any tool, it's there to make your job easier, but you have to use it in the right way, so that you can achieve your desired goal. All right, so I'm going to do one more up to speed, and then we are going to work on our necklace. Perfect. All right. So that is how to use the knotter tool. So let's go ahead and get started with our actual project for today. The one thing that I don't think that I mentioned in our materials in the very beginning is I have this beautiful pendant, where I keep putting my other one to the side here. So they're kind of 2 variations on a theme. You could also use one of these pendants, which I also adore. They're all, I think, I don't know what I was going to say. They're all, of course, available at Michael's. But this is a beautiful hamsa hand. Then we have the crystal here, and then a slightly different kind of crystal. There are so many focal pieces that you can use to make this design. I love it. And that's the fun thing about learning a technique, is once you learn the technique, then you're able to make it your own. So lots of different choices for center pieces, but this is the, you can see right here, just in case anybody's interested in the part number specifically for this one that I'm going to be using today. Perfect. Okay, so from the instructions, and I've already gone ahead and done all of my stringing up, because if I know anything, it's that nobody wants to watch me string up 108 beads. And I can do it fast, but that's not what we're here to learn how to do. So the Mala necklace is kind of a traditional meditative prayer bead necklace. And it's been kind of taken over by different designers in different ways, meaning different things. I have seen different counts. I've seen different instructions. I've seen different ways that people make this design. This is the one that I kind of chose as an example of how to teach for our class today. If there is another another pattern that speaks to you that uses the same technique, that's great. But this is kind of the one that I have gravitated toward, and what we're going to be using today. So Yvette just posted into the comments the pattern that we are going to be using. And indeed, we are using some seed beads in this pattern. So technically, if we want to be technical, it's more than 108 beads, but I treat this part right here with 1 marker bead and 2 seed beads as 1 unit. And the reason why I add those 2 seed beads is because the holes on these marker beads are too big for the size 6 silk. So what do? If my holes are too big, I just put one seed bead on one side and one seed bead on the other side and call it a day. So where is my pointing device? Here we go. So if you look here, what I mean by one unit is there is a knot here, in between here, in between, oops, here, in between here, and then there's a knot here, but there is no knot here. There is no knot here, and there is a knot here. So the seed bead marker seed bead is one unit. And by marker, I just mean the larger beads. So there's no knot in between here. The knot is on the outside, and that's so that the seed beads are holding that bead in place. Otherwise the knots would just slip inside and you wouldn't be able to see them. So now what we're doing is that what I've already done is I have preloaded all of my beads. So I'm just gonna clean up my workspace just a little bit so I have some more space. It's always good when you are working to make sure that you have a nice clean workspace. And the bead mix that I used for my example is the apricot bead mix from John Bead. I don't know, I can't even with this bead mix. I've been using it for pretty much everything. So when you come back and you join me for my series of classes through September and I think October, you'll see that apricot bead mix a lot. I'll send you down to Michael's to buy a lot of stuff, but we'll also use it a lot. Okay, so what I did is following the pattern. I did one seed bead, one marker bead, one seed bead, then 5 of the 6mm beads, one seed bead, one marker bead, one seed bead, then 13 of the 6mm beads, again with that seed bead, marker bead, seed bead. I'm a little far away, but I think everybody can see. So then we do 13 of the 6mm beads. Oops, I got ahead of myself. Where are my 13? Here are my 13. I'm saying the right thing, but I'm not showing the right thing. That looks more like 13, right? And then we do 32, right? 32. I'm just looking on my, 32, okay. 32. And then one seed bead, one marker bead, and one seed bead. Now this right here, I'm just gonna put my hands over this part. This is the first half of the necklace. So this part is on the back. And I didn't include it in this pattern, but I like sometimes putting a little charm there, right? Something just to give it a little extra something, something. Just a little idea. But what that is going to look like is the beads next to each other. But just like I did down here, this is still one unit, seed bead, marker bead, seed bead, and this is still one unit, seed bead, marker bead, seed bead. Okay. Then I have preloaded another 32 6mm beads. I'm just doing the exact same pattern in reverse. One seed bead, one marker bead, one seed bead, then 13 6mm beads. And you can see where I stopped the knotting. We're going to do that together. Then the seed bead, marker bead, seed bead, then the 5 6mm beads, seed bead, marker bead, seed bead. And let's see if I got all the way to the end. Oops, not the right one. So what happens when you're working with too much gray thread, everything starts looking the same. Okay, so then I have my whole thing all put up, okay? Or all strung up, I should say, not put up. Okay, so I pre-knotted all the way up to here, okay? So we're going to knot the rest and finish off the necklace together. So just a couple more times through the knotting process. So one of the things that I always mention, and if you watched my old or my first class on knotting, you can you'll hear me say it. And if you've ever taken any knotting classes with me, you'll know that I always say it takes 4 full 16-inch necklaces until you get it right. So your first necklace will be your learning necklace, right? So you have, you're going to have a couple of loose knots here and there, kind of a, you know, a couple mess ups, but it'll be a really good learning experience. The second necklace that you do will be pretty good. You'll have maybe just a couple mistakes. The third necklace that you do will be perfect, but you'll make one mistake and it will be heartbreaking. But if you know that it's going to happen, perhaps it will be a little bit less heartbreaking. And then by the time you do the fourth 16-inch necklace, you'll have gotten it, no problem. So once you get to the end, especially when you're doing a necklace that's a little bit longer like this, you just need to be careful as you're pulling your beads through the whole thing, because they will get caught on the silk, and that'll just happen. But it's really no big deal, and you'll watch as I go through. So let's do this. We're going to break down a couple times. I'm going to put my Beadalon knotter tool down, and just like before, and if it helps to kind of pick it up all together, and it just feels so good. We're going to see, it's double check. I'm doing a lot of things at once, so I want to make sure that I don't have a double knot or I've skipped a knot. So my bead is into place. I'm going to wrap it around and through those 3 beads, and see how it gets a little fiddly toward the end, but just kind of take patience. Give yourself a moment to get all of the beads through your whole necklace, especially when you're talking and beading at the same time. There we go. And then of course you want to make sure that you flip your hand, pick up from left to right, put your finger in place, pull straight up and through the yoke and off. And there are some comments in about different information about mala necklaces. And it's not one of my, I don't feel like I'm an authority on really speaking about the spirituality of the different chakras and the different colors and what everything means. There is a ton of information online about those different things that you can find. I'm going to teach you how to use the knotter tool and use and make the necklace, and then the rest is up for good amount of interpretation. So I had been talking a lot about using that seed bead, marker bead, seed bead as one unit. And I want to show you really what I mean by that. So I have these 3 beads together and I'm pushing all 3 of those beads against the next bead. So I'm really just pretending, you know, I'm working with it as if it were one bead. And then same thing, coming through. And when I pre-string my beads, I don't know if I've ever really had any fall off from where I have them pre-strung, because you can see they just kind of hang out here. I'm not really pulling this up or off. Even if I did, oh, there's my hands, you can't really see what's going on, but it's not really going anywhere. You could tie a knot, you could use a bead stopper. I wouldn't suggest using tape on the silk, but I don't know, they just kind of hang out on the side and don't seem to really want to go anywhere. But a great tip is you can put like a little zip, put it in a little Ziploc bag with the extra beads. That would work as well. And you can see once you kind of get to the end here, it almost takes longer to move your whole necklace through that knot than it does to actually do the knotted part. But that's how you know that you're getting toward the end. Okay, so moving my bead into place, and I do try to always double check. Because one of the challenges with working with silk is you do not want to have to undo a knot. I'm not saying that I've never undone a knot. I have been able to do it. It's just not a situation that you want to find yourself in. Another thing I want to mention is, see how all of my silk has gotten a little gnarly here. It's gotten a little kind of tangled up on itself. What's happening is every time you do your knots, it's twisting that silk. So I'm going to see if I can do this in camera, but you want to pull it up and just let that silk untangle. So that's kind of hard to show with, with such a small space, but you just want to get that tangle out because it will prevent your silk from knotting where you don't want it to, right? Because I've gone through and I've done all of this knotting, and wouldn't it be a terrible shame if all the way here on the end I got a knot in a place I didn't want. Not the end of the world, but if I can prevent that, I would like to prevent that. All right, so I'm going to finish up just these last couple of beads, and you can kind of see that you get really into the swing of it. And as much as a mala necklace is really for meditation and for mindfulness and for thoughtfulness, so too I think is the process of making the mala necklace, or any jewelry making, but especially knotted design. I really find that I get very kind of meditative and very into the routine, or into the repetitiveness of it. So this is my second to last knot. I'm just bringing everything through really quickly, and it's the same thing over and over again. And now I'm at my very last knot. So I want to go ahead, and once again, I have that 3 bead unit that I'm treating as 1 bead. So I have my seed bead, my larger bead, and my seed bead, and I'm using that around my hand, pulling everything through. And for any other design that you're doing, or really even for this design, you don't have to necessarily knot, in between every single bead. Even when you're using the beads like this, you could do something with, not 3 beads, knot. And in fact, when we come back to front, I will show the necklace that I'm wearing uses that very technique. So now, oh my goodness, we have gone and we have knotted 108 beads plus some seed beads. And this is kind of my moment of truth, is laying it out next to each other. And to be fair, I should have done this, and I did do this before I started knotting, but I should have mentioned to everybody else to do it before you start knotting. You just want to double check and make sure that your counts are right, that your necklace is even. And if it's not the end of the world. Oftentimes, if there's a mistake, the only person that will know will be you. Like here you can see one of my knots, I pulled a little tight, or the hole in the bead might be a little big. So it's kind of little looser than maybe I would have liked in a place or two, but again, really no big deal. So now it is time to add our charm, right? So the easiest way that I have found to get these things off, and it's funny, it's not something that you would think of to like learn in a class, but I think it's important, right? Is I just use my chain nose pliers to untwist the back. Saves my fingers. I always feel like it's better to use a tool for a job if you can. So these are great because they come with a bail already attached and going the right way. So like you don't need to add an extra jump ring or anything to make this lay right. Okay, so last steps. I feel like this is we are rocking and rolling, guys. So I have, and again, you can, I give you creative license to do this last step in different ways. This is how we're going to do it today though. So I'm going to take 1 size 8. These are size 8 seed beads that I'm using, but you could use 11s, you can use 6s, whatever you have in your stash. 6s might be a little bit too, the holes might be too big for the size 6 silk. Okay, so I have one on this side, and I need to get another size 6 seed bead. I'm sorry, size 8 seed bead on this side as well. But the end of my silk here is frayed, right? It's just the nature of what happens. So if you remember to put an extra bead on in the beginning, fine. But I find it is so much easier, especially if I'm not 100% sure of how I want to finish this off in the end. I'm using a big eye beading needle. I have been reaching for these needles so much for the projects that I've been doing for Michael's, because they're just a very handy needle. They're super easy to needle. And how about I do that without my hand in the way so everybody can see what I'm doing. So all it is a great big collapsible eye right here that you can put your silk through. And there's a little loop. Let's pull that up. I got all this great focus. Why am I so far away from the camera? And it just locks in that little back little loop. Just one of those things. If you don't have collapsible eye needles, you will be reaching for them all the time. Okay, so now I can very easily come in here and add another bead. And if you don't have a needle, you can put a little dab of glue on the end. You can put a little bit of nail polish. I mean, there are lots of ways to kind of turn this into a needle, or you can just do it at the get-go. All right, so I have one seed bead here and one seed bead here. And I want to come down there. That's, yeah, now we're good. The only challenge is I need some room for my hands to get in there. Okay, so super, like really easier than easy. I'm going to come with my needle and I'm going to string on the pendant. That's the word I'm looking for, the pendant. And then I'm going to tie a surgeon's knot, okay? So for those of you who do not know what a surgeon's knot is, it's left over right, right over left 2 times, okay? So what does all that mean? I'm tying a knot, let's see, let's get that nice in here, there we go. Tying a knot, these 2 together, right, left over right. Okay, so basically just the start of your overhand knot. And now I'm coming right over left once, and then twice. And then I'm going to tighten everything up. Now, I want to make sure that this knot gets nice and tight. So one of my cheats is I use a beading awl. And I put it right in there, and I pull it nice and tight. But another thing that you can use is the beading awl of your knotter tool. You just want to be really, really careful, because now you're kind of using 3 hands, right? And you just want to pull that so it's nice and tight. And of course, I wasn't paying super great attention while I was doing that, so my knot is a little loose and a little off to the side. So let's see if I can't pull that out. So see how I'm doing that? It can be done, right? You just don't necessarily want to, because there's a possibility of piercing the silk. There's a possibility of weakening things. It's not great practice to get into, but since I didn't pull that super, super tight, now I'm not going to actually watch what I'm doing as I'm tightening this up, and I think I can get it a lot tighter. There we go. And then just for fun, we're going to tie once more for good luck. Okay. And then you can see that I am going to go ahead and snip this off here. And you can see when I snipped it, see how much that frayed? That's just the nature of the silk because it's untwisting from each other. And I have, let's see, let's measure this off. We've got 12 plus 10. So about 22 inches left of the silk after that whole extravaganza of necklace making. So last step, I'm gonna throw a little glue on my knot. So where did I put my Beadalon bead stringing glue? So this is great glue to use for silk. It's great for, well, it's ideal for jewelry, hobby, craft, and household jobs that require accurate application of glue. Okay, so a couple of things about the Beadalon bead stringing glue and some challenges that you might have had with this in the past. So with the Beadalon bead stringing glue, it has a very, oops, that's really funny. My fine tip is, I've lost the fine tip on this one. Do I have another? That's what happens when you grab things from your studio. Oh well, it's going to work the same way. There's going to be a much finer tip here. My finer tip is apparently broken off, but it's going to work the same way. So do not squeeze the Beadalon bead stringing glue. What you want to do is you want to hold it gently in your hand. Okay, I am not squeezing. I'm holding it gently in my hand and I'm allowing the heat from my hand to warm that glue and allow it to flow. One of the challenges that people have with this glue is they squeeze. And when you squeeze the Beadalon bead stringing glue, it has a tendency to go all over the place, which is actually what's happening right now. So listen to my words, not my actions. I'm going to have to take this up to my face so that I can actually see what's going on. My Beadalon bead stringing glue is being a disaster right now, but you want to hold it in your hand and allow that just to warm up. And you can see it discolored my silk a little bit, which is why that knot is going to hide underneath my pendant. But I can't put my pendant there yet because that glue has got to dry, right? And it comes out very, very fast. Because my pendant had a pendant bail on it, I was able to just string it through the top of the pendant bail. But if my pendant was different and it came just with this ring, I would need to add something here, either another jump ring, a split ring, or a pendant bail, like this one here, in order to attach it to my necklace. Another cool way that you can do it is with a clasp, right? This Hamsa hand came with a clasp on top. And this is fun because you can change it out, right? You can, if I can get in here with my fiddly fingers, you can take it off, change it out, and then put it back on for a different design. And this design, I used size 11 seed beads next to my big beads, and then size 8 beads here. So definitely different variations that you can use for the design. And I apologize, GS Hypo Cement and Beadalon bead stringing glue are actually the same thing. So in the instructions, it does say Hypo Cement, but they're interchangeable. Beadalon bead stringing glue and GS Hypo Cement are the same material. So let me snip off these ends right here. And then Stephanie, we are ready to come up to the front and I can show everybody the final design. And there I am. Okay, so I know the hour goes by fast every time. And I always feel like I don't want to rush through some things. I want to make sure that I hit everything. But I think that we covered a lot. we made a beautiful mala style necklace. And the other thing that I love about knotting is that this design is so drapey and supple and soft. So if you had done this on bead stringing wire, for example, it would be a very different project. I just saw a question that I wanted to address. It's a very good question. And the question is, is there any reason that the knot isn't here up at the top? Actually, yes. Oftentimes there is no rhyme or reason to what I do, but there is a very good reason for that. I've done necklaces doing the knot at the back. You can actually see over my right shoulder a couple of tassel necklaces that are done like that. The challenge is you then have to string your pendant on and move your pendant through the entire necklace as you are knotting it. So you could certainly do your mala necklace or any necklace that way with a pendant in the middle and the knots on the back. And I have certainly done that before, but in learning a new technique and in teaching a new technique to someone who might not know how to do it, it is much easier to put the pendant on at the end. So go ahead and do the knotting with it in the front, or if you prefer, you can put your knot in the back. You can put your knot on the side if you want. But it's easier when you're learning to do it with this technique. And I always want people when they're first learning a technique to have success. So I try to break it down to be as easy as possible so that you have the easiest time with it. So with that, I will graciously and humbly say thank you to everyone who participated in the knotted mala class today. On behalf of Beadalon, thank you to Michaels for allowing me to participate in these classes. I will be back at 2 p.m. Eastern time a week from today, next Wednesday. What day is it? Next Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern time, teaching another project that hopefully everybody will like as much or even more than this one. If you have any further questions, you can actually head on over to the Beadalon website. I don't usually say that at the end of class, but I would like to put it out there that I'm always available, well, not always, but eventually I will always available for any follow-up questions that you might have through the Beadalon website. There's a chat feature there that you can bop on and communicate with me. So again, thank you all so very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of your participation. Hopefully everybody learned a thing or two that they might not have known before. Be well, be safe, be healthy, and until next time, happy beading.